We're going to, with great gratitude to our tech angel, Susan Bear, we're going to ask everyone to mute, or she'll just mute us all. And I'll just unmute myself, and I'll ask each speaker when it's your turn to unmute yourself as well. All right, good evening, everyone. It's really good to be with you and to join together for, I think, what will be a fun evening. So welcome to Road of Shalom, players on and off the field, where fellow congregants will share their stories, helping us to connect our interest in sports with our interest in Jewish values. I think I know you all, but I'll say I'm Rabbi Jill Maderer. I use she, her pronouns, and it's great to be with you. We'll be together from 7:30 until 8:45 p.m. And again, thank you to Susan Bear for serving as our tech angel. If you should have any tech questions, the chat to Susan is a great place. A private chat to Susan is a great way to reach out with any questions. A couple of tech notes. We are using closed captioning, so please feel free to opt in. We are recording. If you'd like to not be recorded, you can always just turn off your video, and that will help you avoid it. And we encourage you to use a Zoom name. You can use the rename function if you haven't already Zoomed your name, and encourage you to include the names of everyone in your space, in your square, and invite you, if you're comfortable, to include your pronouns as well. All right, so we are committed, as always, not only to learning, but also to connecting. And so let's take a moment to go into the chat, and we can't really go around the room efficiently and smoothly, perhaps, but maybe just in the chat, introduce yourself and add if you have a favorite sport to either to play or to watch. Go ahead into the chat. All right. Thank you. This makes me want to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." All right. Thanks, everybody. All right, Michael, we knew you were going to be golf, right? That's pretty appropriate for tonight. All right, so roller derby. Is that an authentic sport? I'm not going to judge what's authentic, because my contribution would be yoga. So I don't know. What's a sport? All right. Let's begin. We're going to, as always, lift up Jewish wisdom. And so we'll start with the blessing for joining together in the study of Torah. So if just for the blessing you would like to come off of mute, we can join into a cacophony of sound as we recite the blessing together. I'll put my cursor on the word we're at, so maybe that helps us all follow along together. So we thank God for this mitzvah of joining together and engaging in words of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav tzivanu la'asot divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Just an opening thought about the connection between athletics and Jewish values. I'm inspired by the work of our Union for Reform Judaism, our URJ camp, Camp Harlem. Camp Harlem is one of the many regional camps of the Reform movement, and it's where many of our Road of Shalom kids go, and my own children as well. And there is a pretty significant emphasis on sports there, and here's how they connect it to Jewish values in a way that I find interesting. They take us back to the Jewish tradition of the Musar tradition, which is the Jewish practice of considering what ethical and character values and virtues do we bring into this world and need to work on throughout our lives. Each virtue, each character virtue in this system of Musar is called a midah. And so together the plural midot, there are many, many midot that we all can work on, midot such as compassion or patience, my favorite, that means my challenge, or it could be empathy, it could be trust. Here are 4 of the midot. At Camp Harlem, they focus on a different one each week. Here are 4 of the midot that for me connect in interesting ways to different aspects of athletics. And we'll see as we hear from our panelists and do our own thinking and analysis, we'll see if any of them pop up for us as an interesting match to anything that we are hearing. So the first, maybe I'll put them right into the chat for us. The first midah is bitachon, meaning confidence. Bitachon is also a Hebrew word used for security. In modern Hebrew, it's used a lot, right? Because of the issue of security. But bitachon can mean confidence. The second is nitzachon, meaning pushing through a challenge. The third midah I'll suggest could be interesting tonight is simcha, which like a simcha, like a bar mitzvah, right? Simcha means finding joy. And the last one I'll suggest is achrayut, meaning thinking of others, which could mean thinking of others such as an area of tikkun olam, repair of the world, or achrayut could be thinking of others in relationship to things like sportsmanship and ethics on the field. So I'm just dropping that into the chat in case anyone would like to focus on them at any point moving forward. All right, for now, I would like to thank and introduce our panelists for tonight. We begin, I think I'm going to introduce everyone and then we'll move into the panel. I begin with Ethel Goldberg. Ethel Goldberg, using she, her pronouns, 83-year-old sports maven, fell in love with Richie Ashburn in baseball when she was 10. Unfortunately, he was already married. Well, fortunate for Jules, but Ethel has been a diehard Phillies fan ever since. Her interest in other sports came later. She is the primary writer of Philly Fans on Facebook and writes a sports column for her community newsletter. Baseball remains her first love, with football and basketball close behind. Hockey is a distant fourth. All right, welcome, Ethel. Michael Hess, using he, him pronouns, mostly taught himself golf by rehearsing the swings of Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, and Sam Snead. A 5 handicap, he's been playing for 60 years and still competes. Eyeing a golf career, he won an athletic scholarship to Rollins College until education goals popped that dream. We look forward to hearing about the courses you've played, Michael. Kenny Holdsman, using he, him pronouns, founded and has led Philadelphia Youth Basketball, Inc. after serving as president of Legacy Youth Tennis and Education, formerly Arthur Ashe. Earlier, he was a senior program officer and directed youth engagement teams for the Academy for Educational Development and ran service learning and freedom schools for the School District of Philadelphia. Kenny used his Lehigh BS and Temple JD as an associate at Ballard Spar in Philadelphia and as Congressman Robert Andrews' legislative director. Welcome, Kenny. Brian Seltzer, using he, him pronouns, just arrived at KYW Original Podcasts as a producer from digital reporting for the 76ers, where he wrote, filed video reports, hosted pre and post game radio shows, and started the 76ers Podcast Network, which has ranked among the top 10% of American sports podcasts. A Cheltenham native, Brian long called men's football, basketball, and lacrosse and women's lacrosse games for Penn, his alma mater. He previously worked for 97.5, The Fanatic, other radio stations, and the Reading Phillies. Welcome, Brian. Thank you all for being here with us. And, you know, I think it's obvious, but I'll just make sure it is that all of our panelists are part of our Rodef Shalom family, some even having grown up at Rodef Shalom. So that's some really good yichus. All right. So I'd like to suggest a question for all of our panelists to answer, and the same question, and we'll go right through. So would each of the panelists share, and I'm giving you 7 minutes each, I'll help cut you off if it helps you. What is your role in athletics? How did you get involved? And what Jewish values, or in my language, midot, or virtues, do you perceive are at play? Attendees, all of us participating, feel free, if you hear in panelists' comments, if you hear relevant midot, virtues from the list that I dropped into the chat, feel free to pop into the chat when you see something from your Jewish values or Jewish midot knowledge as it aligns with what you're hearing. All right, so we're going to begin with Ethel. What is your role in athletics? How did you get involved? And what Jewish values or midot might you perceive are at play? Ethel, take it away.
Okay. First of all, I got to once again show off my outfit. My Flyers hat, which has a Yiddish pin on it that says Geflyers, an Eagles shirt, a Philly shirt on top of it, which was given to me by Dan Seltzer, Brian's dad, and my 76er earrings. As my
I hope you washed the shirt. I hope you washed it. Did you wash it?
Of course I wear it every time I go to a game.
Excellent.
As my bio says, my love of sports, initially baseball, started with my one-sided love affair with Richie Ashburn, a rookie with the Phillies when I was 10. He was 21 or 22 and from Tilden, Nebraska. I was, as I said, a 10-year-old kid from Strawberry Mansion. Baseball was always on the radio in our house, and I guess I just absorbed the game by osmosis. And of course, living so close to what was then called Shibe Park, my dad took us to games now and then. I was even at a very historic game, which the Phillies forfeited because the fans were so incensed at the umpires that they started throwing stuff on the field and wouldn't stop. Imagine that. Now, that was not a Jewish value for sure. As a kid, we also sometimes went to Penn's football games at Franklin Field. So I learned the rudiments of football at a fairly young age as well. Basketball came later. I think I went to my first basketball game when I was a student in college in the late 50s until 1960. Columbia had a decent basketball team with a star named Chet Forty, a quintessential point guard. Football at Columbia, I don't think I ever saw them win a game in my 4 years, and there have been few wins since. Fast forward to my adult life. In 1962, I was a young bride living in New York when the Mets made their debut as an expansion team. One of the players drafted by them in the expansion draft was an experienced center fielder, none other than my former love, Ashburn, who was the best player on the worst team in the history of baseball. We actually went to a few Mets games at the Polo Grounds, including what was supposed to be the last game ever played there. But Shea wasn't finished, so they played there for another year, but I didn't go to any more games. In 1969, I married for a second time, and my late husband, Harris, was a former JV basketball player at Central High. I actually played on the same court as Will Chamberlain in the Public League Championships at the arena. He was also an avid golfer and student of the game. So I developed an interest in watching golf, especially in Tiger Woods' heyday. We both loved the Eagles. In the late 1980s, we got lucky. Friends of ours moved away and we inherited their tickets to the Eagles. We also had partial game plans for the Sixers and the Phillies. This was especially exciting because our seats at the Old Vet were directly below the radio broadcast booth, where my childhood crush, Richie, was now a color analyst alongside the late, great Harry Callis. So as you could see, baseball and Richie kept reappearing in my life. And it was a very sad day when he died suddenly, followed a few years later by the sudden death of his mate, Harry Callis. The years marched on, but my love of sports, and especially the Philly teams, continued. After my husband died in 2004, I continued to be a fan and often went to Phillies or Sixers games with my daughter, Marge Goldberg, or her husband, John Fink. Some of you know them. And then I started writing about sports on Facebook. A young fellow congregant said to me one day that I was on Facebook a lot, especially for someone my age. And I explained that I lived alone. So I wrote on Facebook the things that I would have been talking to my husband about. And that's how Philly Fans was born. I call it a blog, but it's really a Facebook group, which now has over 90 members. And I write about current sports events, mostly about the Philly teams. But I also write about the Olympics, occasionally about golf or tennis, and also some college things, like who could forget the wonderful things Villanova did in the last few years. And I also write and invite comments about sports issues, such as should the National League start to use a DH, or what do you think of the ghost runner in extra inning games? Or what do you think about spoiled pro athletes who refuse to get vaccinated, displaying the furthest thing from a Jewish value of loving thy neighbor? On the other hand, kudos to those athletes who take Tikkun Olam seriously, starting with Colin Kaepernick expressing his views about racial equity and sadly being ostracized for it. And I still think fondly of Malcolm Jenkins and his outspoken caring for his fellow humans. And there are so many others who, though not Jewish, display the highest Jewish and human values. You can read Philly Fans on Facebook and also contribute your own thoughts if you become my friend on Facebook, and then I will admit you to the group. Now, how does this all relate to Jewish values? I think it's important for people to have a variety of interests and to work hard, but also to enjoy life, to have avocations that take one's minds off troubles, both personal and other. Watching sports certainly brightened a lot of people's lives during the darkest days of the pandemic. Playing sports also certainly teaches participants important values that are very Jewish, working towards a common goal, respecting rules, and so much more. But I know the other speakers will discuss those in greater detail. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you for getting us started so beautifully. We were with you in every word and would have loved to have heard more, but we are going to move forward. Thank you so much, Ethel.
My pleasure.
We're going to begin now with, or continue now with Michael Hess. Michael, will you unmute?
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks, Rabbi Jill and Rabbi Eli, Gail Meister, Ellen Poster, and Susan Baer for putting this program together. So let me tell you all that playing golf is so frustrating. It's an exasperating sport. Why the hell do we do it? It's so annoying when we hit shots into woods and into lakes and into creeks, and we take penalty strokes, and we get so damn upset with ourselves, and we say, this is a stupid game. So what keeps us going back to it? Well, we remember our few great shots, sinking a few long putts, and we savor them, and we just keep the enthusiasm of that magical buzz alive. Will we break 90? Will we break 80? Will we break 70? Or the dream of shooting our age someday in later years? I haven't done that yet, but I will. I am determined to keep my game strong enough until I do. I turn 72 early next year, so I have a good chance. So let me take a few minutes and just talk about my journey into this sport. I was about 8 or 10 when my dad took me into the backyard with a golf club and a few wiffle balls and showed me how to swing. He said, if you like this, then go watch some pros on TV. That's what I did. I observed and I rehearsed the different swings by Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and the silky smooth swing of Sam Snead. That's the one that I liked the best, and I still have a swing like his today. Arnold Palmer once said that his museum of art was hitting a soaring drive into the sky, into the white clouds and the blue sky, and just watching the ball soar and then land into the center fairway. I can relate to that kind of art even today. So back to my story of teaching myself the game of golf. I noticed that this was pleasing to my dad. And father and son relationships are hard. So finding something to bring me and my dad together was pretty cool. So I got pretty good at playing golf at an early age, and I was a 5 handicap player at age 15. So thinking I was pretty hot stuff, I entered to play into the Missouri State Junior Boys Golf Tournament in Columbia, Missouri in 1965. I learned a valuable lesson. There were other kids better than me. So I shot 79, and this kid from Kansas City was an outstanding player. At the age of 15, he shot 72, 73. He won the tournament. His name was Tom Watson. Yeah, he was a better player than me, and he went on to become one of the best professional players of all time. So I came in about 10th place in that tournament. So I went on to play golf in high school, and I earned a scholarship to play golf in college. I went down to Orlando, Florida with my mom to see Rollins College. I learned another harsh life lesson. We traveled this 1,100 miles down there. We were there for 30 minutes. And my mom said to me, Michael, we're done. We're going home. I said, Mom, what? Wait, what do you mean? We haven't seen the dorms. We haven't met the golf coach. What do you mean we're going home? So as a Jewish mother, she said, look around the campus. Tell me what you see. So I did. I said, well, there's some kids playing catch, and they're playing frisbee, and some are playing chess, and they're having fun. He said, yes, they're having fun. But do you see any kids reading books? So I perused the campus quickly, and I said, yeah, there's some kids reading books there, but not too many. So she said, Michael, we're leaving here because I'm not paying for college, even if it's just for the expenses for you to play golf. You have to go somewhere else to study, to learn, and get a good education. So yes, mom's wisdom, years of Jewish traditions, importance of Shabbat, synagogue, and earning money took precedent over my desire to play golf. I was disappointed. But I went on to college and then graduate school in business. I got married and had 3 wonderful daughters. I worked full time and really just played golf on weekends and with friends. So now, about 50 years later, since that first golf tournament, and since retired, and since remarried to my beautiful and encouraging wife Marty, now I have the time to practice golf and to play more often. She actually pushes me out the door. She says, "Go play, practice, do whatever makes you happy with this sport." So I do. And I've learned the importance of staying healthy, playing with some people better than me, exercising regularly, stretching daily, and yes, keep swinging the club. Thank you.
Michael, thank you. It was wonderful to hear.
Okay.
Malka put into the chat that she noticed the value of community that Ethel's narrative was lifting up. And I'm thinking, Michael, what stood out for me was, in your words, actually one of the midot that's a big focus in Musar is humility. And I love when you said, oh, look at that, there were kids who were better. That was great. And
you still are.
the comment was so striking about you and your dad. And I think, so many of us with our parents or with our children or other precious people in our lives look for those things that are common ground that can bring us together. And there was just such a l'adore, generation to generation moment there to me. Thank you for your wonderful comments. All right, we are going to continue with Kenny.
Hi, everyone. Well, it's really nice to see each and every one, especially Ethel. I said to Rabbi Jill in the chat box that Ethel has this incredible way of tickling me. I met her in, let's see, 1998. I stopped being a lawyer and I went into the Philadelphia School District under a leader named David Hornbeck and our superintendent. And one of the first people I met was Ethel Goldberg. So really great to share this panel with you and the others. So I direct an organization called Philadelphia Youth Basketball. It is my full-time job, verging on an obsession. I think that somewhere there might be a slide deck. I don't need to use it, but I could run through a few slides if that makes sense. And I sent it in advance, and I'm wondering whether it's usable. If not, no worries.
Susan, is that something of your fingertips?
I can pull it up in just a minute.
Okay.
I think I've got it right.
Good.
Here.
So I have a long history in playing sports, but for me, it's far more than the joy and the athletic enterprise of sport. It's much more about, Let me see how I forward this.
You're going to have to tell me.
Next slide. For me, sport has always been a way to pursue social justice, equality, tikkun olam, things of that sort. So I had been running an organization called Arthur Ashe that became Legacy. And a large group of people in the community said, we love the idea of sport for social change, but we're seeing more and more niched organizations, largely played by affluent white folks. And if we want to reach a lot of kids in holistic ways at deep levels, and to have many of the staff come from the very same communities as the kids, why do we not have anything for basketball, which is a very low cultural barrier to entry and a low economic barrier and is really iconic. Let's go to the next slide. So away we went June 1st of 2015, building what we hope is becoming a program, an organization, and a center that has transformative power in the lives of thousands of kids. And in this slide, you see some of the more notable people that have joined us. Sadly, Kobe Bryant is no longer with us, but you also see Mark Zumoff, Elena Deladon, bottom right, Dr. Ayla Stanford of the Black Doctors COVID Consortium. In the middle is Billy Cunningham, Bill Ellerby, Olin Chamberlain, who's the nephew of Wilt, Mark Zumoff, and I know Ethel can recognize every single player from those Temple University teams in the bottom left. Next slide. So in 6 years, we've built a really robust program, and we do academics, leadership development, health and nutrition, culturally relatable mentorship, and of course, basketball. And most proud for me is that we've built the organization, what we call of, by, for, and with the community, with a real emphasis on Black participation and Black empowerment. Next slide. So what we're not is an AAU or elite level player development program, but again, we're using sport to achieve a much bigger social purpose, from disconnectedness, high school dropouts, violence, and a range of other social problems. Next slide. During the pandemic, we really cranked things up. The overwhelming majority of youth programs were totally virtual. And as most of you know, the entire Philadelphia school district was not in person. And in August of 20, we repurposed the Armory at 23rd and Chestnut and created 5 classrooms and 2 courts, and really stepped up to be there for kids when we felt like they needed it most. Next slide. Our latest program, which is about 15 months in the making, is for young people who have been arrested, and through the district attorney Krasner's diversion office, they're not being prosecuted, they've been diverted. And we have a really deep program around identity formation, social and emotional development, and career readiness. And in the bottom left is one of our coach mentors, a young guy named Aaron Crump, who spent 6 years in prison. He's the son of a basketball icon named Hank Gathers. And we're a significant part of Aaron's redemption. Next slide. So these are just some differentiators that we think make us more unique and more potent than most other youth organizations. And you'll see that the overwhelming majority of our work is funded by generous people, corporations, foundations. So the intersection of the values of tzedakah and tikkun olam, for me, reside very much at the core of the work and my own purpose in the work. Next one. So a lot of organizations speak about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. For us, it's a little bit more narrow than that and a little bit more purposeful. And we talk about Black empowerment in part because we think that, you know, the multi-generational Black poverty, Black racism in Philadelphia is omnipresent and unacceptable. We serve about 92% of our kids are lower income Black boys and girls. And the way that our commitment manifests itself is in the academic program. A lot of the sport and society modules we use are built from essays that athletes have written in the Players Tribune that are largely about racial justice themes. We have a leadership development academy at Wharton for emerging leaders of color in our organization. We have 13 Black-owned businesses that we use for all sorts of goods and services. We have a podcast that's themed around racial justice. Our board is focused on the issue. And I'm going to say a bit in a second about the Alan Horowitz Sixth Man Center that we're going to begin building in 28 days. Next slide. So these are some of the modules. And when I got into the school district, I learned about the word pedagogy. I had not known that word. Ethel knows it well, but it's the what and the how of teaching and learning. And one of the things that we always believed in during the Hornbeck years was the importance of culturally relatable, contextually relevant content. And that's what we attempt to bring to young people, where they can find a love of learning, build a point of view, interrogate issues, all of those kind of dinner table conversations that kids in educated, very deliberate households tend to get access to, but not often the case in lower income communities. Next slide. This is just a bit more about our vendors. Let's go to the center real quick, and then I'm going to finish up and stay within my 7 minutes. Next one. Next one. Next one. Keep going. So we are building a 100,000 square foot center in a neighborhood called Nicetown. And next slide. And inside of it will be every programmatic element that we think young people need to succeed, from financial literacy. Next slide. Healthy food, nutrition. There'll be a Philadelphia Basketball Hall of Fame. Next slide. Next one. A retail shop, a civic engagement and dialogue arena. Next one. There'll be a school that co-locates with us. We too will use the classrooms. Next one. Next slide. A lot of conferencing pods. Next one. There'll be 7 basketball courts. The 2 middle ones will open up into a 1,200 seat stadium court. And let me wrap by saying we think that we're building the most significant youth basketball and community empowerment space of anywhere in the country. I'll stop there.
Kenny, thank you. It is so inspiring to hear you talk about this work. And I'll add, because some of us at RS may remember when in 2018, the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, I reached out to the head rabbi of the major large reform congregation in Boston for a little wager because we were up against the Patriots. And so we had a nationally televised competition and bet. And so she was, well, I will say I was to donate to her choice charity if the Patriots won, and she donated to my choice tzedakah when the Eagles won, and our tzedakah was Philly youth basketball. So I appreciated Kenny's partnering with us on that, giving us the capacity to take the fun and channel it into some good righteousness. So thank you, Kenny. All right, and if there are more midot or Jewish values or Jewish virtues that are coming to mind, feel free again to pop them into the chat. And we continue, Brian, thank you for bringing us home. We continue with Brian Seltzer, and I can't help but mention that his last name may be familiar to many because he comes from the Seltzer family, and talk about Lador Vador, right, Brian? So I remember well his grandmother of blessed memory, and work closely with his dad, Dan Seltzer, on our board, and such a leader in our congregation's social justice work. And it's great to see his mom, Kate, here too. Brian, take it away.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Really unfortunate that I have to follow 3 people who are actually doing meaningful, significant work and things out there where I've just kind of served as a vehicle and mechanism to get the stories of some athletes out there. But yeah, really, Kenny, that's incredible stuff. I actually went to high school with Aaron Crump. I think he was my year. I can't remember. He might've been a year behind me. But just really impressive stuff. So I'm trying to think of like, what is it that I have done or contributed of any sort of significance that has any sort of Jewish value. So I might lean on you guys as I maybe tell some stories about my journey and myself to give me some guidance and some wisdom and fill me in on that.
And no pressure, you do you.
Right. So my involvement in sports now is chasing my 3.5-year-old twins around. I've moved into civilian life after like 15 years of working in sports. The last 6 to 7 years, I was with the 76ers. I left them in July to take on this new job with KYW, which is like a news human interest job. The Sixers stop was definitely the most interesting in my career. Before the Sixers, I called games on the radio for Penn, for the football and basketball teams. I did minor league baseball for 3 years. And the Sixers situation really gave me insight into what sports life is like at the absolute highest level. And it's this very funny and tricky thing, because you get to kind of live this life and see this life, but it is not your life. You go on the road, you stay at 5 to 20-star hotels that cost $1,200 a night. You fly on planes that are outfitted, customized to these athletes to cater to their every need. You get on the plane, you're leaving a city. It's, oh, here, would you like a filet mignon? When you're done that, how about we give you a nice piece of brick chicken? Oh, do you want some chocolate chip cookies and milk after you're done? Like, this is the way these professional athletes live. And it's insane. It really is crazy. I think it was really intriguing and fascinating for me to see all that goes on behind the scenes, to see how, in a good way, part of it's good. These athletes get supported in such ways where they can function at the best of their mental and physical capabilities. But on the flip side of it, you're like, whoa, this is like totally out of touch with reality. Like, player X makes $30 million a year, and just think of what $30 million in the city of Philadelphia or anywhere, what that could do. So it was a really interesting juxtaposition of me being in a position where, I have a very modest lifestyle, but you were very much up close and personal to seeing how the elite of the elite live. Yeah, you kind of got to see how the sausage was made. Sometimes it looked like tasty sausage. Other times it was like, whoa, there's some unscrupulous things going on behind the scenes that hopefully, you don't want to have it warp your perspective of what you think of some of these guys. But I think as far as like what I did, when I worked with the Sixers, I worked for the team. So kind of like state media. And I think, the way that I viewed my job and people in our department viewed our job was just, how do we further the connection between the fans and the people involved in the organization, the athletes, the team? How do we strengthen the connection between these players and the community that's really devoted and maniacal about following them. I don't think we ever like told mistruths, but I think we really tried to embellish positives. So if you're frustrated with the team, if they're going through a bad stretch, hopefully we can find some stories and unearth some stories that humanize the players and coaches and executives and the team as well. When I was talking with Gail about, when she reached out, she was like, think of some Jewish values. I think, I guess thinking of cultural Judaism, one thing that I can apply to what I've done is, these guys really have, and I'm talking about the players, they have their guards up, especially now with social media out there, and right or wrong, any misstep they make in public, anyone out there can capture that, and then it can go viral and millions of people can see it. So I think that these athletes really have their guards up. So I really tried to, in dealing with these athletes and trying to build relationships with them, I self-deprecated a lot. I like self-embarrassed a lot. Like I tried to make myself like, oh, why would you want to talk to me? I'm just this random dude. I don't know. I just tried to play off the self-deprecating card a lot to try and disarm them a little bit, and hopefully let me in to try and establish some relationships and build some sort of rapport, because I think that's the only way that you can get stories out of people is if they trust you. They don't have to like you, but they have to trust you. And you can build some sort of rapport and relationship. So that's kind of what I got. I wish it was deeper and more insightful and empowering than that. But yeah, it was just really interesting to see, follow fans, follow what they were interested in. And I think that whole idea of community, that's where sports, that's the thing about sports, it's more of a unifier than a divider. And I think that's the great thing about it.
Brian, thank you. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear you speak, and we really appreciate it. I wonder, some of you have already started to explore, I think, panelists and attendees have already started to explore what are some of the Jewish values or the values in general, or the connections that you've made, and sort of brought greater meaning in lots of ways to your story. I have another question, which is either for those of you who are professionals in your field that is sports related, and that would be probably Kenny and Brian, and then for Ethel, who's taken on, even though it's not professional, a responsibility and a role of leadership within a community around sports. And for Michael, who's taken on competition, who's had and continues to have this competitive experience, is there ever a conflict between your passion or love for the sport and the responsibility or pressure that comes with whatever responsibility or role or professional leadership in some cases that you've taken on? Let's start with, well, I'll give you a moment to reflect, but let's start with Brian in a moment. And as our panelists reflect, and we'll go through in the opposite order now, I'll invite all of our attendees to, if you have questions, to pop them into the chat. And then after we get to this next question, we'll just take the chat questions. So any thoughts on what happens when your love becomes your responsibility, when your passion becomes your responsibility? Brian, do you want to take it?
Sure, it's a great question. I think that one thing that at least I personally had to deal with was, at a very young age, went to countless Phillies games with my mom, my dad, love sports. How can you get involved? How can you make it your career? That sort of thing. And I was really lucky. Like I've for my age, I think I've been really fortunate to take advantage of some cool opportunities. But then, like life happens, and not to fall back on the old cliche saying, well, you have wife and some kids, but you have wife and some kids. And all of a sudden, that combined with just, at least for me getting older, you start to think about like what is really important and what really matters. And by working in professional sports, if I'd stayed, doing college stuff, maybe my thoughts on this would be different. But, you know, kind of like I was saying, the issues that matter to some of these professional athletes are not the same issues that matter to me. Their problems are not the same problems that I have. Their headaches are things that I can't identify with. So I think that those things were happening, you know, over the last couple of years that, you know, kind of rub the shine of and allure off of being in sports a little bit. And it's really demanding. Like, I think that one thing I would never begrudge, even though it might sound like some of the stuff that I said, I don't begrudge these guys their salaries, because they do always have to be on. And for me and the people who work in my department, we kind of always had to be on too. We just weren't making 7 figures or 8 figures. And it is a demanding lifestyle. They don't ever get to turn it off. They always have to be on. They miss a lot if they do have families. So I think that the compensation helps to make up for it. But I think hopefully this answers the question, that it just, you know, at least for me, it kind of lost some of its luster working in it. But I still follow it. I still watch the games all the time. I'm probably enjoying it more now.
Brian, I think it's really interesting because I think, thank you for your honesty. And I think that your sharing of the reflection, you know, the reflectiveness you've taken into your life, and you look at how different stages of life, different things are important. I think that that's a really great model for all of us to always be reflecting and recalibrating and growing. And I really appreciate that. Thanks for sharing it. All right, Kenny, any thoughts on the question? Are there ever those feelings of conflict between, or when your love becomes your responsibility?
Yeah, it's a timely question. So, Jill, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago that you visited our program, which was a great joy for me. You saw our Hoop Hers Girls Empowerment program. And the very next night, I caught word that not one, but 2 boys and 1 parent in our older youth program had been shot. And 1 boy survived, the other did not, and the adult didn't. And we gathered very quickly as a staff team the next morning, you know, what is it that we should do? Should we cancel the program that coming night? How do we, you know, deal with this trauma? And we decided that we would have, you know, some social worker, counselor types come and visit with the kids, because after all, we knew they'd be hurting. And about 10 minutes in, it became very clear to me that the kids had this unbelievable, and this is chilling, I'll say it, a sense of the inevitable, that they would either be shot and killed or spend a life behind bars. So these are 15 to 17-year-old Black boys, and very, very expressive, with a lot of depth, a lot of sensitivity, but this is what they saw as their destiny. And 15 minutes in, they made their voices known. They weren't in need of the healing and the circle that we created. Wow. They wanted to get back to playing basketball and then doing the other off-court work we do around identity development. So I'm watching a bunch of boys with men and women, coach mentors, doing the basketball component, and suddenly realizing that for these kids, this was, it was a safe space, a nurturing space, and something that really brought them a lot of comfort and a lot of joy in the midst of a really chaotic life. I get up to leave, and the boy who had been shot walks back into the James Wright Rec Center at 34th and Haverford. He had a bullet graze on his head, and his abdomen is all bandaged up. He had taken a bullet, and he says to Coach Jaron Garner, when she says, "Kareem, why are you here?" He says, "Well, for one thing, like, you just got to know, I don't have any safe spaces in my life right now. And this is one of them. And the kid could barely walk into the rec center. So a lot of comfort through sport.
And healing. It's incredible. Thank you for sharing it. Just want to sit with that for a moment. All right. Thanks, Kenny. Hi, Andy. I thought that was your place that he was in. Michael, any thoughts, Michael, on what it means to have this love and then connect it to competition and being responsible to show up, or feeling the pressure of competition?
Well, my passion came into direct conflict with my mom in terms of my desire for the passion and to have a future in the sport, and she put the big kibosh on it, and it wasn't until years later that I understood. In terms of competitive play, when I'm playing myself against others, it's a very solo path. It's very humiliating. When you hit bad shots, you have to recover from those shots yourself mentally first, and then go on to hit the next shots better. I also play in competitive games down in Wilmington with a group of senior players, and we play in teams of 4. My team may not be the best team on some given day, but I'm a great coach. I'm very encouraging of the other people in my group, and I always compliment good shots, and I'm encouraging to my teammates, and oftentimes we win because of that. So that's what I'll say.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Ethel, any thoughts on what it means to have this love that you have, and in connection with the responsibilities you've taken on in connecting people through that love?
Well, the Philly fans has been very rewarding and enriching in that I've made virtual friends, and then some of the friends I've had, there's 2 guys that read it a lot and write a lot, and sometimes they argue with each other. And the other day I had to lecture them about being nice to each other. They're both middle-aged men, but it was all in good fun. The issue of responsibility, since everything I do is voluntary and sedentary, I don't feel much of a conflict. I do, of course, as I said, I sometimes write about sports issues like spoiled athletes. Right now, I'm on Ben Simmons' case, and my partner, Jules, has had to give up his fandom of the Packers because he's so disappointed, as we both are, in Aaron Rodgers. Not that he wasn't vaccinated, but that he even lied about it. I want to say one more thing that's sort of tangential. My love of sports, one of the most important things about it was a way that I bonded with my father as a youngster and as an adult. I mean, when I was talking to him on the phone every day when he was in his 80s and 90s, it was nearly always, we started out, how about the Phillies? Good, bad, or indifferent? And he was a typical Negadelphian fan. So it was usually, even when it was good, it was bad. He did live to see the 1980 World Series win. So that was good because it was the only one of his lifetime. The other thing I want to say is what I love about sports today is the equity that is coming to be in terms of women's athletics. And women, I was so happy about this Kate Scott getting the job with the Sixers, because if I were 30 years younger, 50 years younger, excuse me, 30 years old, 30 something years old, it would have been my dream to be Richie Ashburn or have his job instead of him having it. So the fact that you see women's athletics being, getting more media attention, and I will cite my dear love Jules, his favorite team is the UConn women basketball players. And he's so, and they have accomplished so much that others can admire. Right, Kenny?
For sure, Ethel.
Yeah. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but
I appreciate that, Ethel. I appreciate that, your comments. I think it was, I want to go to the chat. I think, Ethel, you raised some really great questions, and I'll invite panelists to chime in as you are inspired. You raised some really great questions about some of the ways athletes have used their position in power to bring forth positive social change. And that could be around gender equity in positions. It could be around lots of things. We've seen a lot of really interesting anti-racism activism. And so I think it's one great line of thinking that's come from this conversation. I'll invite other panelists if you have something to add about that. And while you think about that, I'll go to the chat. Ethel had asked Brian, just to keep it not controversial at all, what do you think about Ben Simmons? Are you allowed to say?
First of all, I think controversial and Ethel, I'm going to go back. They might go hand in hand. I got to go back to, I had to pull it up in my Gmail, July 22nd, 2016, subject, Inquirer plagiarizes Ethel Goldberg. And that was the title of one of her newsletter submissions. I have been a subscriber for 5 or 6 years, something like that.
Wow, you have a fan, Ethel. That's awesome. That's awesome. Ben Simmons has taken up way too much time and space at my dining room table at home, I will say. But what are your thoughts, Brian?
So I could not be more grateful that I left right before the you-know-what really hit the fan. I think it's interesting because actually, in looking through the comments, this whole story touches on a lot of things. First of all, maybe going in reverse order, Ellen just asked about mental health and what's going on in sports and mental health. So Ben, one thing he's citing is that he's had mental health issues that he's trying to work through. That's one of the reasons why he's been away from the team. To me personally, I think it's hard to judge. He might be, he might not be. I don't know. I think it's not right for fans to really pass judgment on that story because he could be dealing with stuff. But just based on his actions and what we know, it also brings up this question of community and loyalty. And even if there are issues going on in your life, how can you still balance that with obligations you have to the greater good, to the collective? My personal opinion is maybe he's fallen a little bit short there, that even if he's trying to work through some things, he could be doing a better job of being a good teammate, and trying to help guys who have gone to battle with him and have tried to help lift him up. Even if he doesn't want to be here, maybe he could give a little bit more of himself. But I thought that he was, from what I could observe from behind the scenes, he came in as a rookie, very much, I'd say, prima donna, self-interested mode. And I thought 2 years ago, he started to get more mature. He'd let you in a little bit more and just seemed more human. And then going into last year, things changed. I don't know if it was just a new environment with a new coach or team dynamics change. Obviously, the way last season ended was horrible for him in particular, and the fans crushed him. But I kind of thought he was like turning some sort of corner with how he carried himself, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it has obviously gone way south.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Anyone else on Ben Simmons? Or is he taking up too much time at your dinner table too? Kenny, what you got?
Yeah, we had former Sixers head coach Brett Brown come to one of our programs a couple weeks ago, and as you'd expect, the kid asked him to give some thoughts on Ben, and he knows him really well. And what Brett said I thought was great. He said that Ben didn't have enough humility and didn't have the right advisors around him, that had at the end of the Hawks series, he said, you know, I didn't play well. I need to work harder on my weaknesses. I need to be a better teammate. I need to be better for you as the fans. And I'm going to work, you know, like Dickens for the next 8 or 10 months to make sure I'm prepared to contribute more to the team and to the city. It was Brett's thought that he would have been forgiven. It's behind him and let's move on. And instead he attacks the coach, he attacks teammates. And it was just such a poor lesson in human behavior. I think it's really sad.
I also think if we look, I mean, I had such high hopes for him. But if you remember his very brief college career, he dogged it there too, because it turned out, of course, he was the best player on a poor team, and he did not, from what I read and saw on TV and heard, he didn't exactly go out of his way to get his team into the NCAA tournament. And then if I remember correctly, the team decided not to go to the NIT because it wasn't the NCAA. And I think he has always been the best player on every team he was on, but he didn't learn that humility lesson, as you said, Kenny, or as Brett Brown said. And it's a shame because he could have been so much greater than he has been so far.
Thanks, Ethel. I'm trying to glance into the chat, and Ned Hanover, the comment that you have, think of the contrast between how Ben Simmons and Simone Biles communicated about their mental health issues. That was our household conversation, and a piece of it was really thinking about, you know, is it a professional basketball player's job to be a model for other human beings, and especially children? And my response with my kids was, it may or may not be in his job description, but if every one of us is responsible for using the power and position we have to do good in this world, well, a public platform is part of the reality of these players. And if someone like Simone Biles can take her struggles and create a message that empowers children, then I give her a lot of credit for using her power and position for good. And that really, I think, prompts a question for all of us, whatever our world is. It could be that our power and position is in a boardroom, on a basketball court, or at a kitchen table. Wherever we have voice, if we can bring the messages that others need to hear to help them become the best versions of themselves, I think that it's all game. It's all game.
Can I add one more?
Final comments, Ethel? Any closing thoughts from our panelists?
Well, let me just say this about role models and examples. I remember many years ago, a younger Charles Barkley said, "It's not my job to be a role model, but I know because of a personal connection that my daughter went to high school with his wife and they have remained friends, and that he, behind the scenes anonymously, is one of the most generous of athletes or former athletes. And so he is a role model, but privately, he's not speaking out as much as some other prominent athletes like Malcolm Jenkins that I mentioned. But, and as you say, just by their position, they can't help but be looked up to by young people. So.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ethel. Yes, final comments, panelists. Michael.
Yes. Yeah, I love it that the real best professional golfers, the ones like Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, they make it a passion of theirs to set up foundations and to do good work for kids in need. And that's almost as important to them as succeeding on the golf course. And I love it.
Thanks, Michael. Wonderful. Any other closing thoughts from our panelists?
Thank you for having us.
It's wonderful to hear all of your voices and everyone in attendance, your presence as well, to just be together in community. Great. Another great closing thought from Ellen Pastor, that there has to be a balance between that public role and self-care. Absolutely. And actually self-care is a part of the message to the public as well, right? So thank you to all of our panelists for helping us see multiple paths to, first of all, to these midot of bitachon, finding confidence, nitzachon, pushing through challenge, simcha, finding joy, and achrayut, thinking of others. And in all of our lives, may we all continue to seek out paths of meaning and to model for others paths of meaning, and have the opportunity to tell and share and hear each other's stories. Thank you all for your participation. Just a note or two. First of all, thank you, panelists. Thank you to Michael, to Kenny, to Brian, and to Ethel. It's wonderful to feel closer to each of you. Thank you to Susan Bear, our tech angel, for being our partner now and for so many hours of so many days of so many months this year being a partner to me. It's wonderful to work with you once again. Thank you to Malka and Ellen and your whole Days of Learning team for bringing us such meaningful experiences and strengthening our community together. We are grateful. Please do respond to them with the feedback in the email. It's really helpful. They are models of what it means to be reflective and grow by taking all of this evaluation and really putting it right back into future experiences. And please be sure to check the Road of Shalom website for the Days of Learning sessions all week long. Great to see you all tonight. Have a great evening. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
To say goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you all. This was amazing.
That's wonderful.
Thank you for doing this. It was great. Good night.
Good night. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.